Fiscal Responsibility Amendment Bill 2013. Let's waste no time to invite government officials to join us. If you read the agenda, you know that we're here mainly to meet with deputations. There will be plenty of time for members to ask questions, and we can continue to study the bill with the administration. The administration has given us some papers, and we will deal with them shortly. First of all, I ask members to confirm the minutes of meeting on the 31st of May 2013, paper number CB bracket 11315 stroke 12 to 13. So far we have not received any proposals for amendment. I understand that members are agreeable to endorsing these minutes. No objections? Good morning. Please be seated.
There
are 17 deputations and individuals attending this public hearing. Members, you may know that there are at least 7 written submissions. You probably have received them. Let me give an introduction of officials attending, and then I will invite deputations and individuals to speak. We have with us Mr. Albert Lam, Deputy Director of Environmental Protection from the Environmental Protection Department, EPD. Mr. Samson Lai, Assistant Director of Environmental Protection. Mr. Lawrence Pang, Senior Assistant Law Draftsman from the Department of Justice, and we also have Ms. Selina Lau from the Department of Justice, a Senior Government Counsel, and also Ms. Libera Zhang, Senior Administrative Officer of the EPD. Before I invite deputations to speak, let me remind deputations and individuals that you will have 3 minutes to state your case briefly. If you have supplementary information, you're most welcome to submit them in written form after the meeting. And if you have further comments, you can also write to us for our reference. And I'd like also to remind you that what you say is not protected under the Legislative Council Powers and Privileges Ordinance, so you are responsible for what you say here. If there are no problems, I believe that you will use Cantonese to speak. If you need simultaneous interpretation service, then you'll find the earpiece in front of you on the panel. 0 is floor, 1 is Cantonese, and 2 is English. And today we don't have Putonghua simultaneous interpretation service. Let me start by inviting the first deputation to speak. Mr. Kwok Ying Ying, Senior Project Officer from Greeners Action. Good morning, everyone. The Greeners Action is very supportive of the extension of the PSB plastic shopping bag levy scheme, and it also will include flat top shopping bags, so in this way they won't get abused. And in relation to the scope of exemption and also charging, these details are not very clear. We ask the administration to step up their education and publicity efforts. The EPD should distribute information leaflets with diagrams and information to help them understand. We're happy to learn that they've accepted the suggestion that the levy collected need not be remitted. They can be kept by shops. Despite that, we asked the administration to require large shops to continue with the quarterly report to monitor the effectiveness of the levy scheme. Since the levy will be kept by shops. Chain stores and large shops will have additional revenue. From our survey, we learned that majority of the respondents would like these large stores to donate the levy collected to set up an environmental protection fund to help our efforts in environmental protection. We also support the introduction of a fixed penalty mechanism, but $2,000 is not a strong deterrent for large shops. So if it's a repeated offense, the penalty level should be enhanced. We also see that the administration should step up their enforcement and monitoring and supervision. Say, for example, stepping up their inspections on small shops.
And they could also consider setting up some hotlines such that the public can also report some breaches. Lastly, we also want to suggest that Hong Kong has a lot of exhibitions, a book fair, food fair, or even environment fairs. These venues are not covered under the levy scheme, but they also distribute a lot of bags, plastic bags. So the administration could consider means or ways to reduce waste in these venues. Next, we have Hong Kong Doctors Union, Dr. Henry Young. The Doctors Union support extending the levy. The Doctors Union before the levy took effect in March 2009, we had already notified the doctor members that in the clinics they should tell their patients that if you don't need plastic bags, then please refrain from using one. And it was quite successful. 30-40% of patients did not request large plastic bags. But today, I'd like to propose that clinics receive an exemption because of health reasons, because the medication we distribute are not commercial products. It's toxic or poisonous. So we need to be very careful in handling these products. I'm not sure if you recall a few years ago, from manufacturing to all the way to the patient's hand, there is a very meticulous labeling system involved. So we're concerned if there are certain circumstances, if a mother is bringing a few children to see a doctor, and if the medication is all placed together, but sometimes there might be leakage or spillage, or there might be some mistakes. If you have 3 kids taking medication, and if one kid is allergic to medication, then it might give rise to problems. So we would urge the government to exempt clinics from the levy. I'm also aware that government clinics are also handing out larger plastic bags for patients. Some patients might have chronic high blood pressure or diabetes, or they might even take contraceptives, so they need to be separated. Otherwise, they might take the wrong medication. So because of these health reasons, I would hope the administration can exempt clinics. And secondly, I had gone through the legislation, and it seeks to regulate commercial transactions, that is when products are handed to customers. But doctors cannot sell medication and poisons. This is part of the Cap 138 Poisons and Pharmacy Ordinance, and that in Section 10 regulates that pharmacists and companies can only sell poisons and pharmacies. So will this cover doctors? This is where I have some doubts. Okay, thank you. Dr. Young. Next, we have Mr. Liu Se-ting, Coalition of Hong Kong Newspaper Magazine Merchants. Thank you, Chairman. Speaking on behalf of newspaper vendors on the plastic bag levy, we support that. From an environmental point of view, newspaper paper bags are not environmental friendly. When you take a plastic bag that contains a newspaper home, it's of no further use. The newspaper industry thought it was doing the customers a service by giving out a plastic bag, but it creates a lot of problems, and we're not willing to do that anymore. And in the newspaper industry, it's very business is very difficult. If having a plastic bag adds to the overall cost. We also feel that the plastic bag should be scrapped. But why do we have to rely on the government? Because this is an ingrained habit now. If newspaper vendors don't hand out a plastic bag, they receive objections. The customers believe it's part of the service, and newspaper vendors also have some worries because this levy. The newspaper vendors have a lower education level. They don't understand the outcomes, so they would like the EPD to provide more information to the industry to educate them on how to implement the levy. I also support that there's no remittance back to the government. The newspaper vendors are just small businesses. They can't handle the extra administrative effort. We need monitoring, and if you allow vendors to handle the levy, we hope there's more assistance to vendors. Next, Ms. Judy Chan from New People's Party. Judy Chan. And first of all, the New People's Party supports the plastic bag levy, but if the retailer does not need to retain a levy record, we're concerned that they might not charge repeat customers the levy. So we question the viability of the scheme. And we also have exemptions in the levy. So what would constitute the terms food will not be spilled during transportation? So we think that there is some ambiguity. Foodstuff item contained in airtight packaging. So the consumers might have breached the law without even knowing it. So we suggest that there should be a trial period for SMEs and the public. Second, the New People's Party repeats that we support the government in reducing pollution at source. So we should have a waste management policy at source that can reduce garbage ending up in landfills or being incinerated. The government needs to educate the public. The Hong Kong public has a tendency to abuse plastic bags. And third, the government can consider introducing a more environmental friendly bag. For example, in Italy, last year they announced that all businesses cannot use a disposable bag. All businesses have to use biodegradable and bags that could be used as fertilizer to replace the disposable plastic bag. Okay, thank you. Next, Mr. Makdukting from Labour Party. The Labour Party supports the plastic bag levy extended to all retail outlets, but in the government proposal, the levy collected by businesses would not be remitted to the Treasury, and it can be retained by the businesses. So retailers are required in the past to remit the levy, and they also need to retain a record so the government can monitor the levy. But in phase 2 of the levy, there is no need to remit the funds, and retailers don't need to maintain a record. So that leads to a law enforcement problem. We need to rely on spot checks or reports. But if SMEs have to maintain levy records and remit it to the government every quarter, you can imagine the extra costs and administrative efforts. How can they compete with large retailers? So Labour Party suggests that we retain, retailers retain the level, and retailers with a certain turnover, they need to remit the levy, such that large retailers can retain the existing levy operation, and they can also serve as a reference for law enforcement. In fact, we can draw reference from the competition law, the second leg where they abuse the market strengths. So let's say a turnover of 11 million will have to, those retailers with a turnover of more than 11 million will have to retain their levy records and also have to remit the levy to the government. The SME's average retail turnover is less than 11 million, so they don't have any competitive advantage. So these levies the government can consider using the levies received being used in education, promotion, and the general public can learn how to use resources more efficiently. Next, Mr. Wong Chor-ming from Green Recycling. We object extending the levy scheme. The government's reason is that plastic bags are non-biodegradable, and the abuse of these bags creates extra stress on landfills. If we look at Annex A, that is not acceptable, because the levy is now creating more pressure on landfills, and it's giving the government more reasons to build landfills and incinerators. Regarding the abuse of plastic bags, we have the consensus throughout the community on recycling. So another reason the government puts forward is that retailers still have a serious problem of handing out plastic bags, but after the levy, the consumers use less plastic bags, but they are purchasing more garbage bags, and the weight is increasing by at least 3 times. And they're also replacing plastic bags by paper bags. So this increases the landfill pressure much more.
So all this shows that taking away the levy will benefit users. Plastic bags itself is biodegradable, and it carries no odor, so it is easily reused and collected. So I think the most feasible way is to make better use of them, and to have a special area to collect and recover plastic bags. In this way, the landfill will last longer. According to Annex A of the consultation paper, it shows that from 2009 and 2010, the levy scheme may result in a drop of use of plastic bag, but for other bags, say for example reusable bags or paper bags, the number has increased a lot. So in a year, it has the number of bags disposed of amounts to 90 million of them. So we have limited capacity in our landfill. So I urge you all to seriously consider taking away the plastic bag levy. Thank you. Next is Mr. Harris Young, 西九龍環保協會. Good morning, everyone. I am chairman of 西九龍環保協會. My name is Young. On a number of environmental protection issues, we generally support them. But this time round, the plastic bag levy scheme, we object to it, and we advocate we advocate taking away the levy scheme. A lot of people don't mind paying the 50 cents to get plastic bags. There are two groups of them. One group would like to save 50 cents by not asking for a plastic bag. The other group are those that are not so economical. They don't mind paying 50 cents to get a plastic bag. Very often, they just chuck the plastic bags into the bin as soon as they get home. For the first group, they would, in the past when they had plastic bags, they would reuse the plastic bags and turn them into bin bags. So one plastic bag will be used twice. And now, there is a group of people who have saved 50 cents by not getting a plastic bag, but they have to pay to get bin bags. So you're just fooling yourselves. You may think that you have used less plastic bags, but you are using more bin bags. And how many non-woven bags do you have at home? Depending on the quality of these bags, sometimes one non-woven bag contains 10 times plastic of normal plastic bags. But will you be able to use these bags 10 times? Otherwise, you are getting something that is less environmental friendly, but you think that it is more environmental friendly. There are more and more non-woven bags. The levy is one of the reasons. Do you want to just see the number of plastic bags drop, or you want to do something about the environment? You're doing something bad with good intentions. So you need to introduce a biodegradable material in place of plastic bags, instead of just fooling yourselves and only tackle the symptoms. You just want to reduce the number of plastic bags, and you don't care about the increase in number of other types of plastic bags. Do you really want to do something about the environment? That's all I want to say. Thank you. Next, Mr. Dominic Lee, Chairperson, Liberal Party Youth Committee. The Liberal Party is right-wing. We do not support the administration's proposal to expand the levy scheme. When it comes to charging an increase of tax, they are never good. The administration told us about how effective the levy scheme was, but they're only talking about 90% drop in the use of plastic bags by these chain stores. But have they told us that with the levy scheme, the amount of plastic bag disposed at landfill and the use of plastic in the community as a whole and plastic replacement materials have all shown an increase starting from 2009 when the levy was in place. In 2010, there is a 17 tons increase of plastic bag and 25,000 more plastic bags are disposed in landfills. A lot of shops use these reusable bags as part of their publicity campaign. Now we have over 17 million of these bags. Do you know that one non-woven bag uses 40 times the amount of plastic bag than a normal plastic bag? Yes, you might have reduced the use of plastic bags and chain stores, but there are more and more non-woven bags and other types of plastic bags used. So I think this levy scheme has backfired. If you extend the scope of the scheme, the situation will not change. You just suppress a small problem by giving a free rein to a bigger problem. You're just changing the behavior of the public for them to use a different type of plastic. You just sweep the dust under the carpet and think that the problem has disappeared. It is doubtful how effective the first phase is. Then why do you want to extend it? You want to reduce the use of plastic bags, then you should first step up your publicity and education effort for members of the public to understand sustainability and to cultivate a habit of that protects the environment. Taxation and imposition of levy will not tackle the problem. You're only shifting the cost from one group to another. So we asked the administration to let the market work on its own so that Hong Kong people can work together for a greener Hong Kong. Next, we have Mr. Ricky Fan, Hong Kong Environmental Protection Association. Thank you. During the first phase, we objected because from a survey we conducted about the consumption level of plastic bags, very often they use plastic bags given by supermarkets as bin bags. Because with the levy scheme, people who used to use supermarket bags and bin bags will now have to buy. So as a result, the amount of plastic bag used has not dropped. But when it comes to the second phase, well, we support that because the type of plastic bags used will be smaller, but they have to step up publicity. Chinese people are a creature of habit. And also, many of the people who go to shop in smaller shops and markets are elderly people. So they have to step up their publicity and education so that people will not unwittingly fall into a trap. In the previous stage, you ask shops to remit the levy collected. We ask that to be maintained. For smaller shops, they can keep the levy collected. There are other waste and charging schemes in the pipeline. It may cause confusion to the public because of the different types of levy, environmental levy. I think a more uniform approach is preferred. We're aware that some manufacturers are advocating the use of paper bags instead of plastic bags. We hope the administration will plug this loophole as well. Next, Mr. Louis Ting, Hong Kong Retail Management Association. Thank you. Our association wants to express 2 points. First, New People's Party has touched on this. That is the definition of packaged food. Under the proposed definition, prepackaged food is not exempted, but the definition is not clear because when it comes to prepackaged food, sometimes, for some unknown reasons, there may still be leakage. And prepackaged chilled food is covered with a layer of ice. So when it's taken out of the fridge, there will be condensation. Constant condensation may come into contact with dirt. And if the food then comes into contact with the condensation, it will be contaminated. And also the condensation will come into contact with the package of other things. Flat top bags is effective in preventing solving this problem. So we want the flat top bags to be exempted like before. And under the proposal, there is a regulation that the levy should not be offset by offering discounts and concessions. But we know that there are some special schemes allowing customers to use the points collected to offset the levy. If this is interpreted as a contravention of the scheme, we think it is unreasonable. These award schemes are very popular among customers. We think the scheme should not hinder the smooth operation of the award scheme. So we urge the administration to clarify this situation, to spell out clearly the scope of the restriction of banning concessions or special offers used to offset the levy. Next, Mr. Jackie Lau, Hong Kong Recycled Materials and Reproduction Business General Association Limited. Will we support the levy, not just on plastic bags? The producer responsibility scheme should be implemented as soon as possible. We think the PSB levy scheme has been in place for 2 years. The levy collected does not benefit our industry. Members of the public think that the levy is collected, but where does the money go? To the public coffer? Well, now, under your proposal, the levy will be retained by small shops. This is problematic. We all have a responsibility towards protecting the environment. There may be different views about non-woven bags and other types of bags. If you don't use plastic bags and instead you turn to non-woven bag, I think it's a personal choice. But first of all, the administration should draw reference from the examples of Taiwan and Korea. There can be some subsidies. For us recyclers, we collect plastic bags. Apart from plastic bottles, we have to dispose of all the plastic bags because it's worthless. They are disposed of in landfills. There is no incentive for us to recycle and reuse them. Of course, levy is inevitable. But there needs to be some long-term policy to support recyclers. Thank you. Next, Ms. Mabel Lau. Good morning, everyone. I'm a student. My name is Mabel. I'm very supportive when it comes to doing more for the environment. Well, I saw that there was no recycle box at my building, so I complained to the management company until there is one. So when it comes to plastic bags or replace or substitutes of plastic bags, the number has been on the increase. So should we expand the scheme? Should we just use levy to reduce the use of plastic bag? The administration should think twice. A levy can only change the types and location where a plastic bag is used, but the habit itself remains unchanged. So this only tackles the symptom, not the problem. Yes, you may charge a levy at supermarkets, but every time I go to supermarket, I see that a lot of people get lots of flat top bags. They get several layers of plastic bag just to carry some apples. A lot of people say that Hong Kong is a lot more environmental friendly. A lot of people use reusable bags.
其實我覺得好簡
I find it very ridiculous. The environmental bags use more than 40 times the plastic than conventional plastic bags. And the extra 4 million bags, environment bags, it is equivalent of 300 million plastic bags. This is not the scenario that I look forward to. So it's very obvious that the levy has just changed the problem. The public are using other environmental bags. We have not brought down the total use of plastic bags. So I would like the government to review its position before expanding the levy. I think the government needs to examine the policy objective. If it is to reduce the use of plastic bags, then rather than expanding a useless scheme, why don't you explore other options to promote environmental friendliness? Some of the resources could be used on education, so the public can understand the importance of sustainable development, or you could have an infrastructure to encourage plastic recycling, or you could support the recycling industry, you could support the transport industry. If you just implement a one-sided policy, it will not be effective. Thank you. Next we have Mr. Anthony Yu. I'm a member of the public and I want to examine the issue from this perspective. Expanding the level scheme is impractical. It looks environmental friendly. If you look at the first phase, you are levying a tax on one type of bag. Well, it seems to be effective because there's less use. In the past, you purchase one item, you get one plastic bag. But now, when the public, when they see free handouts, they will collect 20, 30 of these environmental bags. We see less supermarket plastic bags, but there's more of other plastic bags. So, if phase 1 doesn't work, how will it work in phase 2? And a lot of SME retailers, they just sell bread and daily necessities. You know, given inflation and the levy will add to their costs. The large retailers will benefit at the expense of small retailers. How are you going to safeguard consumer interests? You're saying in phase 2 the levy doesn't have to be remitted to the government. So how, if it's not remitted, how can it be a levy? If you can't supervise the levy, you can have to rely on spot checks, and that would require a lot of resources. So if that time and money is going to be spent, why don't you spend it more effectively? Reducing plastic bags is just part of the equation. I feel that the government should adopt a multi-pronged approach. The government should support the recycling industry. It should educate the public. It should cultivate new habits amongst the public. The government should also start with itself and lead by example. Should we have more efficient lighting in highways? Should we have less emission? And ultimately, the government needs to lead by example. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been 4 years since this levy was introduced, and we really have nothing to smile about. The levy has unfortunately made no significant impact in encouraging a more sustainable use of our natural resources, reducing the volume of plastic waste, or enhancing public environmental protection. If the government genuinely cared about reducing plastic consumption and eco-responsibility, we would be targeting not only plastic bags, but also polystyrene boxes and food containers, plastic beverage containers, and plastic cutlery. We would not have waited 4 years before expanding beyond 3,300 registered retail outlets. If our political leaders truly led the environmental fight, we would have banned at least non-biodegradable plastic bags by now. The 50% levy is a purely symbolic and emotive target that panders to our guilt about general environmental protection. Plastic bags are by nowhere near Hong Kong's worst environmental problem. But even then, after 4 years, we are still not able to curb its use. If our government wants to expand this levy, despite its abysmal performance thus far, we must think about the realistic reasons for our government's continued pursuit of the project. If our government was truly committed to the environment and wanted to take eco-responsibility seriously, we should have seen many more attempts to reduce plastic waste in our city. So we ask you, if not environmental, then what reasons does our government have? Why does our government introduce a point-of-sale small addition to our supermarket bills, and maybe now charge at your small and medium enterprises as well? What does this increased administrative capacity and this administrative experience prepare our government for? The Lion Rock Institute posits, perhaps the administration wants to carry out a controlled experiment to see the leakage of such a tax collection mechanism at the point of sales where retailers collect a nominal tax for the government. Perhaps the government is attaining the administrative capacity and experience to one day introduce a VAT. We challenge our government. Either show a genuine commitment to environmentalism and stop putting lipstick on the pig that is our seriously degrading environment, or come out straight, be transparent, and reveal the reasons why this levy is still being pursued. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pemberton. 下一位呢，我想請係
Next, we have Mr. Rick Lee Wong from Hong Kong Plastic Bags Manufacturers Association. If we want to be environmental friendly, then the levy should include all items. If we just focus on one type of plastic bag, then other retailers will use paper bags or other types of material for packaging. Second, the government should introduce a carbon footprint audit. On the issue of carbon footprint, the polystyrene bags are worse than other products. I have a diagram here. You can see a plastic bag, if you use it once. Paper bags can be used 3 times. If you have bags for life, they can be used 4 times. And for cotton bags, their carbon footprint is 131 times a typical bag. These are figures quoted from the UK EPD in 2011. Another point, I suggest the government look at different types of plastic material. Plastic packaging is not just limited to polystyrene. The New People's Party had referred to Italy, where they banned plastic bags last year, and also have the permitted plastic bags, the biodegradable plastic bag introduced in Italy. This is no worse than a typical plastic bag that we see currently. The benefits of this plastic bag, they can be used in a compost machine. If you use it as a part of the composting, it can be part of the fertilizer. So environmental awareness is a global trend. So as a plastic bag manufacturer, we support these new developments. When the government implements any environmental policy, we would like the government to take a wider approach to achieve real results. Next we have General Chamber of Hong Kong Ceramic Sanitary Wares, Mr. Wong Kin Sun. I don't have much to add. Okay, you're done? Okay. Last speaker is Momentum 107, Mr. Holman Keat. A few months ago, a 70-year-old man came to my office and said he slipped on a shopping mall. I asked him, well, we don't have, these are not too common in shopping malls. The old man said he went to a supermarket. He didn't want to pay the $50 levy to save 50 cents. So he had bread in one hand, milk in the other hand, and when he left the shopping mall, he slipped, and ever since the implementation of this levy, how many people have suffered injury because of the inconvenience? And now the government wants to expand this scheme from supermarkets to wet markets. This is a major inconvenience and discriminatory policy against elderly and handicapped. Hong Kong is a very compact city. We won't drive. We have to rely on frequent trips to supermarkets and wet markets. But a plastic bag makes it very convenient, and the plastic bag has other uses at home. A lot of speakers have said a plastic bag, besides being used at the point of purchase, it can also be used as a garbage bag. And according to the EPD statistics, after phase 1, the number of plastic bags in the landfill increased significantly. Plastic bags and flat bags use is almost equivalent to the number of supermarket plastic bags. So the fact is, through legislation, you cannot change consuming habits, and you also give rise to unintended consequences. What about the use of paper bags when you ban plastic bags? The carbon footprint of a paper bag is 100 times that of a plastic bag. Whether a tool is environmental friendly should be just based on the material used, but a paper bag requires 100 times the resources of a plastic bag. So we see the SAR environmental policy, it has been a show. Why do we have officials who are collecting salaries of hundreds of thousands of dollars a month? Why are they not here to negotiate or talk to the public? They're just doing a show. I'd like to remind members, deputations, that if you have any supplementary material, written material, you're welcome to submit it to our secretary.
政府
So the members and the administration can follow them up. Thank you. Well, I will now ask Mr. Lam to give us an initial reply after having heard the deputations and individuals, and then I will throw the floor open for members to ask questions. Thank you. And I thank deputations and individuals for attending. Deputations and individuals have spoken, and we've also received written submissions from other deputations and individuals. We will consider the views expressed in detail. Let me say that when it comes to the levy scheme, this is one of the initiatives for reusing resources and environmental protection. When it comes to assessing the effectiveness, I would look at it from a different perspective. Previously, a summary of sustainable resources and environmental protection was released by the Secretary. We accord priority on waste reduction. The different producer responsibility scheme, including the PSP levy scheme, is one of the initiatives. So when we look at the objective, the policy objective and the effective, it should be looked at in the context of the big picture. These initiatives are part of general policy. You may say that this individual initiative is of limited effectiveness. Why can't we do more to promote sustainable lifestyle and waste reduction, or step up our education? On a macro level, we have done publicity and education, and the PSP levy scheme is one of the important elements. Back to the policy objectives. This is to reduce waste. During the first phase, we have set down some effectiveness indicators. We have learned from the experience of the first phase. We've set down our objective for the next stage. That is, through the levy scheme, to change the habit and lifestyles that is wasteful. We would like the public to make better use of resources when they shop. They will use reusable bags instead of getting plastic bags every time they shop. Some deputations talk about problems arisen as a result. What we would like to do is to change their habit. If they shop every day, then we would like to encourage them to bring their own bag. Some people say in the past that habits are difficult to change. When we conduct a survey after the first phase, we find that the majority of the respondents have changed their lifestyles as a result of the first phase. They would bring with them their own bag when they go out to shop. That's why we would like to continue with this objective in mind in the second phase. What we gather from the first phase is that if they shop in the designated outlets, they will remember to bring their own bag. If we expand the scope of outlets to all shops in Hong Kong, then more people will bring their own bags when they go out to shop. A lot of people mention about experience of their own trade. We will roll out our publicity and education campaign when the second phase is implemented. We will roll out large-scale publicity campaigns. The levy coverage will be expanded to small shops, say for example small retailers and newspaper vendors. We will, through different ways, conduct publicity and education campaign to clearly explain to them that what items are exempted and what are included in this scheme. For drinks, food and medication, there will be exemptions. We will have information pack with diagrams, pictures and information made available to traders to ensure smooth operation when the scheme is implemented. Some deputations mention about compliance and penalty. We admit, and we have also submitted paper to the panel, that in the future, when it comes to inspections, prosecution, we will adopt a different approach. We don't want a compliance solely through compliance and prosecution. We would like the public to understand that we aim at reducing waste. We believe that members and retailers understand our objectives and they will not deliberately contravene the law. We will first deal with publicity and education to get the public and retailers to understand how they can comply in their everyday life with the scheme. There is a lot of mention about abuse of flat-top bags and non-woven bags. Let me say that in the second phase, that is in the bill when the second phase is implemented, we have changed the definition of a plastic shopping bags. In the first stage or first phase, flat-top bags and bags with no handles are not included in the scheme. In the second phase, we propose to change the definition of PSB. All bags made with plastic are defined as PSB and subject to the regulation of the law. Abuse of flat-top bags will be curbed. There are lots of issues raised today, and I believe members would like to ask questions. So this will be it for my response for now. So apart from your verbal response, we ask the administration to give us a written response before the next meeting. You've heard objections, supports, and requests for specific exemptions. So please give us a written reply so that members of the public will be able to find a record of what you've said today. Now, members, would you like to ask questions? We have Wong Ting Kwong, Lo Ai Kok, Helena Wong, Wu Chi Wai. We have quite a lot of time, so 5 minutes for each member's question and answer. Mr. Wong Ting Kwong. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for coming to the Let's Go to give us your views today. When it comes to environmental protection, I don't think anyone will object to that. The administration proposes the extension of the PSB levy scheme. Well, let me give you some suggestions. Some food for thoughts first. What is the objective of the levy scheme? For environmental protection or increase revenue to the public coffer? I'd like to hear your answers. What's your view? 2. On levy, the administration proposes to launch it at a retail level. But what about import? Would it be better to do it through import? This will reduce conflicts between shops and shoppers. And if you can resolve the problem on an import level, whether you're a customer or a retailer, the levy is charged. Whether the charge is recovered from the customer is a matter of choice. Number 3, target group. Is it the case that now there will be an across-the-board approach on plastic bags? What about biodegradable material? Will it be exempted if it's non-biodegradable? Materials that are harmful to the environment, can we consider imposing a levy on them? Whereas for biodegradable ones and not harmful materials, then there will be exemptions. To strike a balance between environmental protection and convenience to shoppers' everyday life. And about the levy, in the past, they are remitted to the administration. In the future, I suggest that they will be remitted as well, but not to the public coffers. It will be used as a dedicated fund on environmental protection. So for these 4 points, I ask deputations to give us your comments. Thank you. You ask deputations to give you their views. Yeah, whoever is interested. Sorry, would you please wait a second? Mr. Wang Choming, I have a question to ask. What is the definition of environmental protection? Plastic bags. Is it the case that if it's non-biodegradable, then it is not environmental friendly, and vice versa? And we're talking about global warming and CO2. If it's degradable, then it will emit CO2. Otherwise, there won't be any. If it's not degradable, then it can be reused and recycled for many times. But if it is degradable, then you will have to dispose of it, to deal with it. Say, for example, food. It will rot. So you will have to deal with this in a different way. You will have to put them in a landfill and then cover it. But for non-degradable ones, then you can just put them aside. They don't need special treatment, and they can be recovered and reused. Mr. Lau said that for plastic bags it's worthless, so they are dumped at landfill. But if you put them together, then in the end there will be some value when a certain number is accumulated, and then they can be recovered and reused. Well, there are some points that are debatable when it comes to what Mr. Wang said. Plastic bag is only one area. Yes, we have to bear in mind CO2 emission, and there are other policies to deal with that. Today, we're here to talk about plastic bags. But if we touch on other policy areas, then it's not something to do with the bill. I'm a businessman, so I think about management effectiveness and also cost effectiveness. You mentioned about non-degradable bags, accumulating them, and then in the end there will be some value. Yes, but the value will be too low for the cost. Thank you, Mr. Wong. Perhaps the administration would like to give a response to the 4 points later. Next, Mr. Lo Wai Kwok. What I think of the first phase is that it's got good publicity and educational value. When me and my friends go to supermarkets, we will bring our own bags, whether it's a non-woven bag or a carton box. It's become part of our lives.
And some people who drive would also place a shopping bag in the back of the car. And this, I think the levy did have an education purpose and achievement. The individuals today have raised a good question. That is phase 1 of the levy. We do see less use of supermarket plastic bags, but its substitute and replacement perhaps has brought about an even bigger problem. It seems that the government official had not responded to that. Especially, they were quoting specific figures. The carbon footprint, the environmental bags have a 40-time carbon footprint. And how many times can it be used? If it can be used 40 times, then it just offsets a plastic bag. My wife would recycle these bags, so I have a lot of bags, environmental bags, in the back of my car. So I think the government needs to respond to the figures, the different plastic bags in the landfill, and the plastic material used in Hong Kong. So these will illustrate the point, and I think the government official needs to respond to that question. I also didn't hear a response. Even for those who support the levy, they still have some issues on the exemptions, such as what constitutes foodstuff already contained in airtight packaging. There might be moisture, ice cream would melt, so I think the officials need to respond. With respect to Mr. Lo Wai Kwok's question, let me respond to the landfill question. On packaging, food packaging, exemptions, the bill has a clear regulation. How to interpret that, we can deal with that when we get into clause-by-clause scrutiny. But since the last meeting, we had submitted a paper. We tried to use some diagrams to explain what would constitute an airtight packaging. We do have some examples. So when we get to that document, we can deal with it. We have in the annex 3 major types of packaging. We had provided some examples in the annex. Landfill statistics. During the consultation period, in 2009, prior to the levy, and 1 year after the levy. Overall speaking, the supermarket, convenience store bags, that dropped significantly, 75%. And in these sectors, not all retail outlets comply with our definition of a retail outlet. So overall speaking, the use of plastic bags dropped 90%. It's in line with international figures. But for unregulated sectors, there's an increase in use of plastic bags. So if we extend the scheme, the outlets will be regulated. For example, when they purchase clothing, books, and if they can use their own shopping bag, we can extend the use. Just now, a few speakers mentioned woven bags. So after phase 1 of the levy, non-woven bags, how much has the use of non-woven bags increased, and what's the typical life cycle? And as the one speaker said, you resolved a small problem, but you created a bigger problem by introducing different types of bags. Well, if possible, I'd like to follow up with your question. We do have a proliferation of non-woven bags where they think it's environmental friendly, but in fact it is not so. Non-woven bags are also a type of plastic bag. It's a thicker material, a more durable material. From our perspective, we don't want plastic bags being abused, including non-woven bags. If you reuse shopping bags, that should be encouraged. Non-woven bags, prior to the phase 1 levy, a lot of these bags were handed out free. There were calls to assist the low-income groups. So a lot of these non-woven bags were handed out. They're not they're not eco-friendly bags. It's not environmental friendly. So within the government, we have issued guidelines, and we also have spoken to relevant organizations that they should not hand out free non-woven bags unless there is a specific need. But we can't see what specific need there is for a non-woven bag. So, in the majority of government activities, we will not hand out free non-woven bags. We don't call these eco-friendly bags. If you receive these bags, we would like you to use it repeatedly. But have we conducted a survey on its life cycle? As far as I know, we haven't. But Mr. Low, from your experience, you are aware it could be used for quite a while. In the past, a lot of deputations thought this was an assistance to low-income groups, but these free handouts have decreased significantly. We don't hand out non-woven bags. We encourage people to bring their own bags. Other durable material, easily cleaned material. Thank you, Chairman. My question wasn't answered. So what are do we have manufacturing figures for non-woven bags and also landfill figures for these non-woven bags? It's a substitute, but it has to be used repeatedly. Has it been abused? this information can be delivered from the manufacturing data and landfill data. We have government officials, if they can't provide the information now, we can follow up later. Do we have manufacturing data and landfill data to see whether there's an abuse of this type of material? I'd also like to remind Mr. Lam, he referred to an annex. So the paper has been received. It's CB bracket 1 1291/1213 bracket 02, and in the panel we had distributed some of this information. There's an annex at the end. We have different packaging examples, whether we need a levy or exemptions. So we shouldn't look at it at the clause-by-clause scrutiny. We need a broader discussion. You can also provide further input after going through this information. Next, Ms. Wong Pik-wan. Thank you, Chairman. We agree that after phase 1 of the levy, we see the public are cooperating. Plastic bags previously might be used a few times. We do see some change in habits, but expanding the scheme and the legislative amendment, I think it's still problematic. First of all, the trend now, I think, is mistaken. The regulatory target, it's mistaken. We're talking about polluter paying, but the focus of the policy now targets consumers. Has there been over-packaging? You have not regulated that. And then at the retail level, you're protecting, you're shielding the retailers, and now all the burden is shouldered by the consumer. Have retailers been handing them out free, and now they don't need to remit the levy? They have no responsibility at all. Why do you only want to target the consumers, but letting the retailer and manufacturer off scot-free? Why are you not targeting importers or local manufacturers or over-packaging? You should levy, you should charge a levy. And the levy, why isn't it remitted back to the Treasury to handle environmental problems? I don't understand. Why are consumers the scapegoat? I collect a lot of plastic bags and non-woven bags. I don't even use the plastic bags handed out by the management company. So
they may not get plastic bags from shops, but then they ask for bin bags from the management office. So, well, you can't control the conglomerates and the shops, the big shops. Now you turn to small retailers and members of the public. The Democratic Party is very strong in our objection that when it comes to the levy, they have to be retained by shops. Well, what about incentives to encourage shops and producers to reduce packaging? Say, for example, if they simplify their packaging and they use less plastic in their packaging in the manufacturing process, then would you maybe reward them for using less packaging, for reducing the distribution of plastic bags? You have to reward them. So you also focus on manufacturers and producers, because they generate plastic bags at source. Sometimes customers don't have a choice. So I think you have to adjust your approach before launching it. Mr. Lam. Thank Ms. Wong for her suggestions. Well, let's go back to the first phase, and our rationale behind the product eco-responsibility scheme. The levy is to increase the awareness of consumers so that they will make better choices and change their lifestyles. Previously, they could get plastic bags for free when they shop at chain stores or supermarkets, so they wouldn't think twice before getting them. They also expect to get plastic bags when they buy newspapers. We believe that such habits need to be changed. In the past decade or two, through different media, we advocate BYOB, bring your own bags. Before the first phase, our efforts did not yield much success. And after the first phase, when designated outlets are covered by the scheme, it proved to be quite effective. Behavior of customers has changed. And as you hear that we're talking about environmental charging, this is not a tax. The levy can be avoided. So it won't cause much of economic pressure on people's lives. If you bring your own bag, you don't have to pay the levy. So it's not the case that we want to get the levy for our public coffer. We want to reduce the use of plastic bags in order to reduce waste at source. Ms. Wong mentioned about other measures that can achieve the same goal to reduce waste at source. For individual items or areas, there are legislations to ban excessive packaging. In our blueprint of the producer responsibility scheme, we can launch various schemes to regulate, and they will be launched on different levels. We don't think the levy scheme will be the panacea to our problems, abuse of resources, but we hope that the second phase will take us one step further, a bigger step, to cover all retail outlets in Hong Kong to encourage a change of consumer behavior to reduce waste. Ms. Wong. Mr. Lam did not answer my question. Well, it was said that apart from plastic bag levy, they don't roll other measures. But you have failed to answer me about the responsibility of producers and shops. There are many different trades. Say, for example, you buy a bouquet. Just one single rose, and it's wrapped by many layers of plastic bags and layers of papers. I don't know if you bought a bouquet or some flowers. Maybe the packaging will be double the size of the bouquet. Well, I just used a newspaper to wrap it up. But I think it is unnecessary. Well, you buy a bouquet, but each rose is wrapped by layers and layers of materials. I think it is done. I think it's something done by the shops. The shops produce all these layers of packaging for customers. I think you have to be fair to reduce the use of plastic bags. You should not just target consumers. It will be of little help. And you have to think about how to improve collection of plastic bags so that they will be put to better use. A lot of people told me that for other places, their recovery of plastic is very well done because plastic is not worthless. When they are broken up, a lot of countries use it as a raw material to produce other items. But we need land. You have to separate the plastic and treat it. So you need to roll out measures to help these industries. I know that in the Eco Park there are a number of such recyclers run by Yan Oi Tong, but they need more help. There is good experience from other countries. The trade's blooming and they are profitable. There is centralized treatment. They don't have to go to the landfill. So can you step up your effort to help and promote the development of a green industry so that there is room for survival for them in Hong Kong? Sorry, I don't have much experience in sending bouquets. But what Ms. Wong described is excessive packaging. Well, there is little experience overseas to regulate packaging, but I've seen that the legislation is as thick as a telephone book, because you have to spell out details of how to wrap just a rose. It would be really verbose. But when it comes to excessive packaging, if they're produced locally, say mooncakes, we will cooperate with the industry to launch some voluntary schemes. But don't think that since it's voluntary, it won't be very effective. There are some that are quite effective. Previously, you see that you will see lots of unnecessary material in the packaging of mooncakes. But now you see the situation's improved. There is no excessive packaging and you don't see cutleries in the box. So it can be done when it comes to locally produced items. Another way to tackle excessive packaging, as we see from overseas experience, is through waste charging. Whether it's a producer or consumers, they have the choice to reduce waste. If they don't need the excessive packaging, say in South Korea, the consumer can return the packaging materials to the shop. So on various levels, they can achieve reduction of waste at source. And about plastic recycling. When it comes to plastics compared to other materials, say for example waste papers or waste metal, plastic recyclers are having a hard time because the price of plastic is quite volatile, most of the time dropping. We understand that there is the wish for the administration to do more. So apart from the waste separation bins through various measures to support recycling points, we encourage recycling and collection of plastic. When it comes to papers and metal, the operating environment is better. And we support NGOs to collect and recycle plastics. Yan Oi Tong is one important project. They have the land, they have the equipment to turn plastic into raw material. Now let me advertise that in our blueprint, recover is an important part. So we don't just stop at levy scheme. We have supporting measures in place for recover. Mr. Liu would like to give us a supplementary information. Is that right? I would like to respond to what Ms. Wong said. It's a personal experience for me. When it comes to the legislation, it helps us. It's not just about the levy. They want to change the behavior, one that inclines towards abuse. Once the levy scheme is in place, convenience stores stop giving out free plastic bags. Of course, if they want, they will be given, but our experience tells us that customers don't ask for plastic bags. But does it mean a drop in business? No. Business volume maintains. And you may think that it is unfair to the public because they've been giving out plastic bags for free. But no, the situation it was over the top. Plastic bags were abused. And when one starts giving out plastic bags, then all the others have to follow. I've been in the newspaper vending business for decades. And it was only recently that you will have to give out free plastic bags. And it's meaningless for newspapers to be put in plastic bags. So the levy scheme can tackle the problem to some extent to curb abuse. Of course, the trade is affected, but customers are not affected because they buy the newspaper for the newspaper, not for the plastic bags. And they will bring their own bag to put the newspapers in. So we support the administration's proposal, and that's why I tell you our experience. Well, if we don't want to if we refuse to giving out plastic bags, then we're scolded by customers. But if it started by the convenience stores that they stop giving out plastic bags, then we can follow suit. Mr. Wong, you would like to say something? Every day, thousands of tons of waste is transported to the landfill. Then why can't they set aside an area in the landfill for waste like plastic bags or tires? They are not degradable, so they will not rot. They will not give out odor. And after accumulating a certain amount, then they can be claimed. Because some people would want the tires, plastic bags, bottles. A large part of the cost is storage. If you set aside an area in the landfill, then you can store there is the material, so they don't have to be buried in landfill. I think it's tough for the administration because they would like to extend the landfill, and they're met with strong objection, and you now ask them to carve out an area in the landfill. No, I'm not asking for the landfill to be extended, just to set aside an area in the landfill, but there is not enough room in the landfill. But if the material is not buried in the landfill, then it won't take up extra space. Yes, we understand that it's just about plastic, also timber, papers, and other types of waste. We would like them to be recovered and reused. And we would like to have focused a discussion in the community. And now let me turn to Mr. Wu Chi-wai.
I'll agree with Mr. Lam. The Phase 1 plastic bag levy has changed some behavior, but I feel in the process of the levy, if we were to quit in Phase 2, then would retailers resume their old practice of handing out plastic bags in Phase 2? So the argument of an administrative fee increase and withholding the remittance of the levy in Phase 2, that's not a reasonable arrangement. But for SMEs, it would alleviate their business expense. Well, can we implement it in 2 tiers? As I said before, can you do some statistics? How many are chain stores? So I would like you to reconsider this point. Second, I'd like to follow up on Mr. Wong's question. All recycling needs to separate, collect the material. I recall watching a Shanghai TV program. There's a large factory where they separate the material. There would be areas for glass bottles, plastic bags, and so on. Just now, we heard a new idea. The landfill collects all kinds of garbage, and if we had some facilities to sort the garbage, then perhaps that would be the best location to conduct environmental recycling work. Have you thought about that? Or is Mr. Wong's idea impractical? And third point on plastic bags, biodegradable bags versus non-degradable bags. They can't be mixed together. And the general public cannot differentiate between the two. But the scenario we have now, even if people are willing to recycle the product, it can't be done. Because after collecting and cleaning, I have to separate biodegradable versus non-degradable bags. So if we allow biodegradable bags, that would affect the recycling business. So I'd like to hear the government's response. in phase 2, is Mr. Wu saying we need to continue, we need to have large retailers remit the levy in phase 2? He said that there are 100,000 SME retailers, but a major portion of retailers are chain stores. So I'd like to ask, can you differentiate them? Newspaper vendors are another subgroup. So I call this a two-tiered approach. If for large chain stores, they have to remit and keep records, but for SMEs, they can't afford the administrative costs, then they can be exempted in phase 2. So I can still monitor the development. In the past there was reporting, and now you have to rely on self-regulation. When you relax it, the old behavior would resume. To use the newspaper vendors as an example, in phase 2, we would like to extend it to all retail outlets in Hong Kong. And since we want to expand, we've consulted the public. So that might indicate that levies would be retained by the retailers. To use newspaper vendors as an example, during the busy period in the morning, they have very rapid transactions, and if we require a record for each transaction, I'm not trying to target newspaper vendors. I'm just asking if there can be two tiers. Mr. Wu is referring to chain stores. We have one that are regulated, and the second group have a more relaxed regulatory approach. We had submitted a document on a dual track regulatory approach. We had explained from different perspectives it's not feasible. We need to be equal before the law, and there has to be a non-discriminatory implementation of law. So our conclusion is that having a dual track system is not feasible. Yes, I've read that. But the controversy was, if you want to expand the scheme, you have to tell us what's the percentage of chain stores in all retail outlets. Is it totally infeasible? The newspaper vendors want to change consuming habits. Are we out of ideas? I don't want all the responsibility to rest on self-regulation. That's a large risk. We have to rely on self-regulation, and we have to rely on the levy to change habits. Now you're relaxing it. So will the problem, will we revert to old habits? We're not totally relying on self-regulation. There are spot checks. We have telephone hotlines. I'd like to respond to the landfill garbage separation question. I've visited other areas and facilities. I haven't seen garbage separation in Hong Kong. We have odor complaints. If you conduct separation, I think we'll see more odor complaints. When a garbage dump unloads its cargo in the landfill, we need to cover the garbage as soon as possible to stop the odor problem. Another difficulty is collection of garbage in Hong Kong. All garbage dump trucks have a compression facility. They collect the garbage and compress it in the truck. So if you were to take this compressed material and separate it, it would compound the problems. So first of all, our landfills don't allow this process, and if you this would also entail a lot more land use if you were to separate the garbage, and site location would be very difficult in Hong Kong. So over the years we have conducted separation at source. So before it gets into the recycling container, we want to conduct separation. We want to educate the public to separate at source. Of course, separation at source is very important. But no matter how you separate at source, even for glass bottles, you need area space to do so. And Mr. Wong provided an insight. We have large landfills that could provide this opportunity. Ms. Priscilla Leung? Well, we have to thank the deputations. I think we need a multi-pronged approach. The policy might not be perfect, but education, promotion, separation at source, all of this has to be done. So between the carrot and stick, expanding the scheme, will it really be efficient? At the retail level, could we have more encouragement? In 2007, we had an environmental procurement campaign. We invited multinationals to participate. We wanted the government to encourage green procurement. So if they could get more resources if they conducted green procurement. Could we provide some incentives? Some vendors don't pay tax, so how can you encourage them? This is actually very important. How should you encourage them? In their procurement, in their material procurement, there should be environmental elements and incentives. So I hope you can think along those lines. On the levy side, I don't agree with the relaxed approach. You should not look at it just from an administrative expense perspective. We need to monitor the situation. It has to be effective.
There should be some kind of control, whether other done by the administration or some other bodies, say NGOs. When it comes to PSP levy schemes, the levy collected should be used for environmental protection purposes, for green groups, or on environmental protection measures to help people in the environmental protection trade. Say, for example, old people. Well, will your publicity and education measures reach them? Can they pay the 50 cents? What difficulties do they encounter if they can't pay the 50 cents? So whether it's the first or the second phase, the levy collected should be used for environmental protection purpose. Either part or all of it should go to this purpose, and of course I want it to be the entire amount. So please think about how to go about. For it comes to green consumption and green procurement, I think these are the fundamental issues. So please put more effort in coming up with more feasible proposal. Maybe you leave some time for the administration to answer. Mr. Lam. Ms. Leung asked how we can help the public to comply. The direction is more or less similar, if not the same, for the first and the second phase. It's not necessarily the case that plastic bags are to be given for free. You can choose not to take plastic bags by bringing your own. I've already mentioned that. When it comes to certain items, say drinks, food, and medication, if you don't have your own bag, in the second phase, the use of plastic bags for these items are exempted. If it's food, if you need a plastic bag, it will be exempted. Yes, the message will have to be widely disseminated, reaching to each and every stratum in society. We have our own publicity measures. We can cooperate with district bodies. We will reach everyone. We will explain clearly to members of the public about our requirements and what are the special circumstances when exemption is granted. Ms. Leung also mentioned about green procurement and also taxation, tax concessions. It may not have a direct relations with the bills. May I advertise again that in our blueprint, We also mentioned about environmental protection in an integrated manner. Green procurement is one of them. We've compiled a green procurement list covering over 100 items. Government departments are required, when they procure the 100 items, using the green procurement approach regardless of the price. When we were compiling the list, we spoke with NGOs, we share experience with them. We invited these groups to talk to chambers of commerce or trade associations about the government experience on green procurement. And if companies would like to adopt the same approach, they're most welcome. Mr. Porter. Let me focus on some specific issues. It seems that the biggest hurdle is whether we will adopt a dual track system, whether the administrative fees will be remitted or retained, and should chain stores be excluded from the exemption. Let's go back to the basics. Government policies should not be discriminating unless it's warranted on the grounds of public interest. Otherwise, we should not complicate matters. I strongly object to government policies where it is stamp duties or not, for reasons that they are overly discriminating, because this runs counter to the basic principles advocated by Hong Kong. So I don't really understand what specific reasons they have. Say if you used 10 employees as the definition of SMEs, you're not targeting chain stores. They are not problematic. It's only a form of business operation. And very often, chain stores are operated by families. They are run by individuals under a franchise system. Do they have the resources to deal with the administrative side of the levy? We need to focus on that. So unless there is a strong reason to target chain stores or large stores, we should not target them. I think members shouldn't just think about votes. We're talking about Hong Kong's core value. Mr. Wong mentioned about setting aside an area in landfill for separation. I'd like to add to Mr. Lam's reasons. We shouldn't add to the transportation cost. If it is placed at the landfills instead of close to the source, then it will only add to the transportation cost, which runs counter to the spirit of environmental protection. We don't want to open someone up before we look at the problems. We would like to study all the issues and find the problems before we start the operation. I think it's only common sense. It's difficult to separate colored water after you've poured it into clear water. So in short, don't mix up recyclable waste with non-recyclable waste before you separate them. And in relation to newspaper vendors, is Mr. Liu. I echo his views. I might have digressed a bit. Well, newspapers are getting heavier and heavier, but it doesn't increase or improve its quality. And I will give some time for response. Mr. Wong has raised his hands. Mr. Wong, on recycling. What about recovery at landfill? And very often you may have not seen it, that truckloads of planks, tires and plastic are dumped at landfills. It's not the case that they are mixed with other wastes. If you have an area for people to set down plastic, planks, there is no need to engage workers to separate them. So, if you separate degradable waste from non-degradable waste at refuse collection points, then it is feasible. If you separate them at the refuse collection points before they are transported to landfills, then it is much more convenient. If you mix the degradable waste, then they will look like normal garbage. But if you separate them, then it won't be the case. And then in answer to what Mr. Wu said, well, if you mix the different types of waste together, then you may spend a lot of time on it engaging experts, and it will still be difficult to separate them. But if you use layers to separate them, it will be easier. Say, for example, if you use a certain type of plastic for cups and lunch boxes, then it will be easier to separate them. Or you just treat them and turn them into oil to fuel. A lot of members have questions to ask the administrations and deputations and individuals. And we've used quite a lot of time, but I don't mind that. But thank you very much for coming. Thank you for your concern and your participation in the discussion. Thank you.
各位委員呢，跟住落嚟呢，我哋繼續。
Members, let's continue with the second part of the meeting, and it will last until 11:45 or 12. Our discussions has led us to this part. Mr. Wu touched on government responses to questions asked in our last meeting. I've already given the paper number. I will say it again. It's CB bracket 11291/12 to 13 bracket 02 is the administration's response to questions asked. And I will ask Mr. Lam, according to our established practice, to present this paper. Mr. Lam, please. Thank you. This is in response to questions asked by members and the legal advisor. I apologize for not submitting this paper earlier because we have to verify certain information first. First, coverage of the proposed extended scheme. So, Mr. Wu and some other members asked about data, the coverage on in 2009 and the situation before the second phase. We're asked about the number of outlets. You'll find the answer in the paper. According to the Census and Statistics Department, about 99% of retail establishments in Hong Kong are regarded as SMEs. So the coverage in the proposal will practically cover nearly all retail establishments. The second part is about the implementation details. Compared with the first phase, we have introduced an amendment to the definition of plastic bags.
根據呢個數。
We have the present definition that it is made wholly or partly of plastic, and there is a handle hole, perforated line for tearing out a handle hole. So these would be the definition of a plastic shopping bag. Under this definition, non-woven bags would come under the definition in phase 1. And paper bags, if they have a lamination, if it has plastic components, these will be covered in the first phase of the levy scheme. So what's the definition in phase 2? We'll make some amendments. In paragraph 3, the flat bags are not included in the definition. In phase 2, when it's implemented, we'll include the flat plastic bags. So that is the change in definition. Another important change regarding food hygiene exemption. In the regulated retail outlets and supermarkets, when you purchase food, and if you'll have to pay the levy for a plastic bag, in phase 2, we've considered food safety, food hygiene, and we receive positive support in public consultation if we want to avoid the levy and sacrifice food safety. That is not advisable. So in the amendment bill, we've made some exemptions. These would include foodstuffs, beverages, medication. These would be included. Under food hygiene, we have examined which can be totally exempted. Some we have airtight packaging. The consensus is that if there is airtight packaging, then it should not need a plastic bag. So we will have some detailed arrangements for airtight packaging. And what do we mean by securely segregated from the outside environment? In our annex, we have provided 3 examples for you. So even we have 3 major types. We've given you 3 examples for each category, and in the future, when we implement phase 2, we will use these text and picture examples to illustrate. now are aware of bags distributed from the levies charged. In the future, the levy will not be remitted. So, will it have any impact on our assessment of the effectiveness? We have set out in the paper that there will be some impact if we want to learn of the efficacy of levy on discouraging plastic bags. We can do so through different methods. We can conduct surveys in landfills. We can examine the number of plastic bags in landfills. So after implementing phase 1, phase 2, we will have concrete data to assess the efficacy of phase 2. So aside from these, we also conduct telephone surveys to assess consumption behavior, purchasing behavior. So together with telephone surveys, we can confirm the landfill data. We can monitor the developing trends. Next, I'd like to respond to the legal advisor. First of all, application to the government. The Product Eco-Responsibility Ordinance currently does not bind the government. We will, in the amendment, we won't make any changes. But does that mean that the government can hand out plastic bags free? No. Internally, in phase 1, we have already notified all bureau and department. Aside from not handing out free plastic bags, non-woven bags, we said that that cannot be distributed anymore. So with the implementation of phase 2, we will continue. Government departments we've communicated with different government departments. They cannot hand out plastic bags free, so will not be affected. We will not distribute free plastic bags. The second issue is product eco-responsibility regulation. We will have to introduce necessary legislative amendments, and that will be our next stage of work. The third issue is about circumvention by inclusive pricing. In section 18.2, we've already made some requirements. When we get into clause by clause scrutiny, we can see how we can target circumvention. If a retailer seeks to circumvent, the customer can seek a refund. If the retailer refuses a refund, it indicates that the retailer has breached the regulation. So that would conclude my report. I think we have some questions, but before that, I'd like our colleagues to hear from our legal advisor. Actually, I'd like to confirm some information. In the paragraph 9 of the Chinese version, were you referring to in the Chinese version? It refers to 18.2, but it should be 18A bracket 2. If that's the case, could the government provide more information regarding paragraph 9 before we respond? In paragraph 9, if a retailer says that the product sold includes the plastic bag price, we're not saying he's providing a free plastic bag to the customer. It's just that the plastic bag price has been included in the whole package of products, and he just issues one price. It's not free. If that's the case, the government's explanation is that the customer has the right to refuse the plastic bag, and then the customer can seek a refund. So could you explain, when the customer tells the seller that he doesn't need the plastic bag and he can therefore refuse to claim the PSB and seek a refund of the PSB charge, and the seller has to provide the refund when so requested, otherwise it may serve as evidence for contravening new section 18A bracket 2. I'd like the officials to examine 18A bracket 2 blue bill. A2 refers to duty of seller to charge for plastic shopping bags. That's the title. It seems to refer to a fee collection, not a refund arrangement. So could the official explain, if the customer is denied a refund and the retailer, how can that be seen as evidence as contravention of 18A? If you look at what 18A says, when the seller sells a product or promotes a product or otherwise in connection with the sale, charges the customer an amount not less than that prescribed in Schedule 3 for each plastic shopping bag or each prepackaged pack of 10 or more plastic bags, the seller must not offer any rebate or discount to the customer. It seems that the whole 18A bracket 2 talks about the liability of the retailer. He needs to charge such a fee. It does not seem to mention that if there's no refund, it becomes evidence of contravention of 18A bracket 2. So I hope you could provide more information to see why that would be the foundation for breach of 18A bracket 2.
細節多啲。
Let's go through them point by point. We have to consider the details when we go to clause by clause. In relation to 18A bracket 2, will the administration like to respond to issues raised by the legal advisor? Yes. The legal advisor put forward a scenario. Our understanding, would you please maybe raise your voice? The scenario put forward by the legal advisor is that the shop assumes that the shopper will take a plastic bag, and as a result, the price for the levy is included in the price. But if the customer does take the plastic bag, then yes, the levy is included in the price. It is inclusive pricing. But the customer may refuse to take the plastic bag. That means the assumption of the shop that the consumer will take a plastic bag doesn't stand. And naturally, the shop should not force a plastic bag on the customer and charge the customer. So the shop will have to refund the customer. A refusal to refund indicates an intention to circumvent. It will serve as a result as evidence for prosecution. I'd like the administration to explain further why a refusal to refund forms an intention to circumvent. Members, 18A bracket 2, the heading is Duty of Seller to Charge for Plastic Shopping Bags. Of course, I understand that you try to think of different shopping scenarios, say for example pre-packaged items. The seller may have already included the price, the levy of the plastic bag in the price, but the consumer may ask for a refund of the 50 cents because the customer doesn't want a plastic bag. Ms. Sitho, just a silly question. The paper said 18.2, but in the blue bill there is 18.2, but the legal advisor is talking about 18A bracket 2. Are you two talking about two different things? Well, it's confirmed that they are talking about 18A bracket 2. But the paper says 18.2. It's a typo. And can the administration confirm again that it's a typo? Ms. Ho, you may refer to the English version. It says section 18A bracket 2. But that is a typo. In the Chinese version, A is missing. And I sought confirmation from them. And it's confirmed. Sorry, I was in a different meeting this morning. Please continue. Since this will have an impact on the public when they shop, of course, the administration and all of us would like to reduce the possibility of grey areas as far as possible. We're not challenging you. What we're concerned is to be as clear as possible in the law, so that there won't be any misunderstandings or chances for people to circumvent it. In May, we've sent you letters twice to seek clarifications. We're not trying to delay. We see that the paper is still inadequate in certain areas. Perhaps you will go back to think about how to better deal with the situation. Ms. Ho? And of course, the administration the administration should answer the legal advice's questions. Of course, for a reasonable man, if they don't take the plastic bag, they would like to get the 50 cents back. But we're talking about prosecution. You need to deal with it more cautiously because it involves a criminal liability. And I see some pictures. The picture shows grapes. But what about other types of fruit? That you can eat the peel or just remove the peel? Of course, for durian it's completely different. But what about pears, apples? You can eat the skin as well. You need to give clearer information so that ordinary citizens will know what to do, so that they will not unwittingly contravene the law. Mr. Lam just now talked about a comprehensive publicity campaign that leaves no stones unturned. Of course, for durian, grapes, they have to be packed. But what about other types of fruit? You see a bundle of flat-top plastic bags for customers to use in the fruit section. Can you just simply examine all types of fruit? You aim at changing customers' behavior. You're not trying to catch people who have broken the law. Of course, you don't need a bag for bananas. But I think it's better to be lax than too strict. When it comes to the drafting, there are a lot of questions raised by deputations. Perhaps the public can't understand fully what's required. Maybe you will consider improving your drafting to help the public better understand their legal responsibility. You're not trying to set down legal traps for people to catch people. You want people to be responsible, to change their behavior. So you look at it like a textbook. Say, for example, for equal opportunities, it's kind of like an education, a textbook. And if you want to change people's lifestyles, then you need to use a standard that is easily understandable by ordinary people. Instead of saying that the foodstuff item is already contained in airtight packaging, or no part of the foodstuff item is exposed to the environment and nothing will spill out of the packaging in the course of conveyance. You need to use everyday language for people to understand. Mr. Lam, any reply? A short reply, perhaps. We fully understand what Ms. Ho said, that under certain circumstances we need to be more lenient. Of course, when it comes to the law, it has to be accurate, setting out the exact circumstances when exemptions are given. And when it comes to the examples in the annex, you see some fruits, grapes. Well, fruit is food, grapes may damage easily, so in conveyance it may spill. And the law says, the proposed legislation says that when it's food, whether it's of a hard shell, husk, durian or grapes, if it is not packaged in an airtight way, then as long as it's food, it's exempted. We're not trying to say that, well, this kind of fruit, you get an exemption, for the others, there is no exemption. We do understand that when it comes to implementation, we should be more lenient. So if you say fruit, then it's easily understood. So you might have let durian off, but it doesn't really matter. We're talking about small amount. If there is possibility of frequent disputes, I don't think it's something the administration would like to see. I see that Mr. Lo would like to ask questions, but let me first let the administration answer in relation to Section 18A bracket 2. A letter is sent by the Secretariat to ask questions. Ms. Lee? Members, you may refer to a letter dated the 7th of May, a letter sent to the administration. We just wanted to clarify one thing. If the seller provide a plastic bag on the retail level and the levy is included in the price of the item, that is inclusive pricing, the customer has already paid the levy as part of the price. So this will reduce the incentive to refuse to get a plastic bag. And in the blue bill, it says that the seller may retain the plastic bag levy, and they don't have to make any reports to the administration. That means as long as the seller makes an arrangement to pay no less than 50 cents for the plastic bag and provide a plastic bag to customers, then it will be reverted back to the old days when there was no PSB levy scheme. So it touches on legal points and policies. It never occurs to us that this is a circumvention, because in the bill there was no mention that sellers can't adopt inclusive pricing. So it's not a matter of circumvention or not. So this is the background. So I hope that it will help members better to understand the bill. Mr. Lo Kwok. In relation to inclusive pricing, we think that sometimes we encounter a situation in which the seller package several items together as a special deal. Say a bottle of oil containing there may be a package of 3 bottles of oil, and they are sold on a special price, or a bottle of oil with oyster sauce and sold as one single item. So do you have to charge the plastic bag levy? So if it's inclusive pricing, can the customer refuse? Say, for example, well, I'd like the package of that item sold as a deal, but I don't want the plastic bag. Can you please take the plastic bag out for me? Sometimes it may not be inclusive pricing. Say, for example, they would like to charge more so that they give out plastic bags automatically and charge the levy every time. Well, under the law, if you ask for a plastic bag, you have to pay 50 cents. And then now, this is the other way around. If you don't need a plastic bag, the seller cannot charge 50 cents. And I think you need to think in greater details about the bill.
Speaker just now referred to pharmaceutical products. It might not be airtight. A patient, when he receives medication, it should be in one plastic bag to avoid any errors. I think that needs to be clarified. And a deputation speaker referred to refrigerated products, ice cream, as an example. And the practice is in supermarkets to place these frozen products in a plastic bag. You also refer to heat wrap, and coming back to ice cream, aside from its packaging, there's also heat wrap, but that's not very leak proof. If you walk around in hot weather, it would leak. So if you want to have a comprehensive policy, you have to consider all the details. Any response to Mr. Lo Wai-gok's comments? Well, in inclusive pricing, you referred to 2 bottles of peanut oil plus oyster sauce if it's packaged together, and the plastic bag levy is included. Well, we had received a lot of queries and complaints where retailers added prepackaged 2 bottles of detergent that was packaged in a plastic bag. In the current legislation, this prepackaged product, whether it is 1, 2, 3, or any number of products, it's not covered, it's not regulated by the plastic bag levy. So for prepackaged goods, a bag of goods with a pricing, it would include packaging and the product's price. So if we have 3 products in a bag, we don't have that consideration. We don't want to change. We don't want to change the business practice. Second question was about medications. If there are different plastic bags for different medication, our understanding is that aside from food, medication is also exempted. So if they have different pills or other medication that is packaged, it will receive an exemption. Your third question was about frozen products currently, if the product is airtight, there would be moisture accumulating on the product. So no matter how many plastic bags you use, there would still be this moisture problem. So if the food is airtight, it doesn't need to be regulated. If it leaks, if it's ice cream, an ice cream cone, it would melt. Food hygiene is affected. If it's not airtight, then it would be exempted. Any other questions? Whether it is totally airtight, this is a very likely scenario. For example, butter. It comes in a box. It's okay when it's frozen, even if it's. But when the temperature rises, it melts. So we'll have argument. It's necessary, and why do they need to charge 50 cents? So we have a gray area here. 陳恒鑌、謝偉俊。Packaging is very diverse, even if we there might be exemptions, but that we have Ziploc packaging. How would that be assessed? Or is this definition appropriate? If we purchase toilet paper and it's packaged individually, and then there's a larger plastic bag to contain 25 rolls, and they can pack 2 packs with another plastic bag, how will you deal with those? Retailers are just trying to drum up more business. So can the legislation cover all these scenarios? I'm afraid the frontline law enforcement agents will find it difficult to enforce. Could you explain your policy? How do you well, responding in general, if we have airtight food, it will not be exempted. So to turn your question around, you might not have an incentive to make it airtight if you want to hand out a plastic bag. Regarding law enforcement standards, we want to have clear guidelines, but as members said, aside from law enforcement workers understanding the law, they have to have a common standard with the general public. In the future, you'll have to comply, and in certain circumstances, there are exemptions. Chairman, I like ice cream, so whether there should be a plastic bag for ice cream. the plastic bag will prevent moisture from affecting other products. And for safety's sake, we don't want the contents to spill and affect other products. So for retailers, I think we need to reduce the inconvenience. If we change habits too much, I'm afraid it won't attain our objectives. And I think we've already seen these problems in phase 1, and now we're taking the practice and extending it beyond large retailers to small retailers. So can the officials share some experience? Which products, for example, ice cream, can one plastic bag provide sufficient protection? Because the ice cream containers are not too solid. You squeeze it a little bit and the contents will flow out. I think the administration has a response in the legislation. Well, regarding law drafting work, our DOJ colleagues can assist. For different types of foods, such as ice cream, I will bring my own container for frozen products. We need to regulate that, and the law tells us how to do so. And for airtight packaging, they will not be exempted. That means if you feel there's a possibility of spilling, then it's not airtight. So it should receive an exemption. I agree with the legislators. We need to educate the retailers and consumers that is acceptable. So I can focus exclusively on ice cream in this example. So food exemption is an area of high public interest. We've gone through different phases. We talked about lunch boxes. The majority of lunch boxes are covered quite solidly. They do not spill. But the public tell us there's a strong opinion. The plastic bag for lunch box should be exempted. So even if you're containing food, even if it's not 100% airtight, there's a chance of spilling. And to use a lunch box as an example, we allow an exemption. And we hope that this can be applied to ice cream and other specific foods. You need to understand that we won't refer specifically to lunch boxes or ice cream. I'm very happy to hear that clarification. I hope we can have a more specific response on next occasion. But have you considered like a taxi driver requiring to explain his fees? If they have any breach, there's a risk of prosecution. We need the public to understand that the 50 cents are included in the price. If it's and they can also seek a refund if they don't want the plastic bag. can there be a mandatory notification at the cashier? Mr. Lam? Thank you. Yes.
Yes, we can include that in our education and publicity campaign covering different trades. So apart from publicity, can you do more in terms of legislation? I think this is a new issue. The administration needs to go back and think about it. Some questions were asked by our legal advisor, Ms. Lee. I thank Mr. Zhe. I'd like to get some clarification from the administration. Can they explain to us that based on what legal grounds that when a customer refused to get a plastic bag under the inclusive pricing, the customer has a right to get a refund of the levy? They will have to give us detailed explanations so we will better understand. Well, this session lasts till 12 o'clock, so it's just the time, and we'd like the administration to give us more details in answer to legal advice's letters, and to give us more information about what's included in the exemption and what not. In the clause by clause, we may touch on specific circumstances, so I do think that the discussion will be quite meaningful. Hopefully next meeting we will go into clause by clause. Ms. Ho. Some deputations mention about other plastic containers. I see that from their submissions. They also mention about cosmetics and personal stores, micro beads. This may not have a direct relations with the bill, but I'd like the administration to give us an information paper to tell us their stance about other plastic containers. And these micro beads, when it gets into a sewerage system, what will happen? Yes, this may not have a direct relevance with the bill, but if the administration can give us the information, it will facilitate our vetting. I've also asked the administration to give us information paper on a number of issues, say for example statistics and recovery and recycling data. Hopefully we will be able to get these responses from the administration before we go into clause by clause, and give us more information on legal points instead of just 2 short paragraphs. Next meeting, let me remind you that it is the 9th of July, a Tuesday, 10:45 in the morning. There is no other business. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.